Senator Hanson-Young.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy President. I rise today to speak on the topic of children who are currently held in Australia's immigration detention facilities. As I stand here, the latest numbers of children held in detention here in Australia is 112. Last week, in this place, the Senate voted for amendments to a piece of legislation that would release children within 30 days, ensuring that those children and their families could live safely in the community. The test is now for the Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull. Will he agree with the Senate to allow these children to live in the community while their claims for refugee protection are assessed, or will he continue to keep them locked up in prisons here in Australia and, of course, in Nauru as well? There are another 200 children or thereabouts locked up in detention on Nauru. One of the most important things about allowing the children here in Australia today the access to be released into the community is so that they can have a proper access to schooling. One of the most important ways of ensuring that these children can integrate into our communities is to allow them to have a normalised schooling life. At the moment, out of the 112 children who are locked up by this government in Australia, a number of these children are allowed to go to school, but it has only come after weeks and months of pressure from advocates to ensure that they could get access to regular schooling. The children who attend school, as well as being in immigration detention, suffer from serious stigmatisation. It often takes weeks, if not months, to get the children into school, and because of the ping-pong nature of how the government treats families in detention, they're often being moved from detention centre to detention centre, both to Nauru, to Australia, from Australia back to Nauru, within Australia, from Melbourne to Brisbane to Darwin. It's very hard for those children in those circumstances to really become part of a school community. But one of the most saddest things, and when you talk to families and children in these detention facilities, when you talk to them about going to school, they talk about how it is the security guards who have to take them to the school gate and to the school classroom. In the case of here in Australia, it is security guards dressed in Serco uniforms, because it is the private contractor, Serco, who accompanies them to school. And so when they get dropped off at the schoolyard, all the other children in the school wonder why. Why is this student who's in grade 3 with me being accompanied by 2 guards? What has those children done that is wrong? Of course, you can see how the bullying and stigmatisation of being taken to and from school every day, accompanied by guards, would play very heavily on the minds of these already vulnerable and fragile children. The children who get to go to school have their school bags searched on their way back into detention. Heaven forbid they may have smuggled some crayons or an extra muesli bar into the detention centre. One 10-year-old girl who lives in the Melbourne detention centre, her mother has told us, comes home from school in tears every day. She tells her mum that no children will play with her in the schoolyard as they think she comes from a prison. The sad truth of that, of course, is that she does. Immigration detention are prisons for these children. Many children are bullied. Other children accuse them of being criminals. They're also picked on for their clothing, which of course is handed out, the generic clothing handed out by the private contractor, Serco, often not very well suited and often ill-fitted. One teenager currently in detention in Darwin now refuses to go to school because the bullying in the schoolyard as a result of him being a child asylum seeker became so bad. Sadly, that young boy has started to self-harm. Parents talk of how kids are often hungry after they get home, after they've been picked up by the security guards, brought back to detention, having their bags searched. They get back to their room in the detention centre and there is no kitchen for which their parents can provide meals. They have to wait along with everybody else to line up for mealtime, just like a prison. Many of these children that I'm talking about currently today have been in detention for 2 or 3 years. This is a lifetime for a child. Many of the children received no schooling when they were first detained on Christmas Island, despite the minister's duty to enrol them into school. They've been ping-ponged across the country, flown back and forth from Australia to Nauru. Many of these children have missed out in months and months and months worth of education. The biggest concern right now for these children is that in 2 weeks there'll be school holidays. And for children across the rest of Australia, like my daughter, who's in grade 3 and is 8 years old, it's an exciting time to have the summer holidays, to spend time at the beach, spend time with your friends and family, and be free from the school structure. Not so for these 112 children currently in detention. These children have 12 days left of school. Those 12 precious days, despite the stigmatisation, despite the bullying, are the only time these children are allowed out of this prison. With the approaching school holidays, those children are filled with dread that for weeks, while other children are out playing, while their schoolmates will be spending time at the beach, these children will be locked up behind bars for the entire 6-week holiday period. There used to be a program, a designated persons program, where those who were designated volunteers could take children and their families from the detention centre on regular visits outside. Sister Bridget Arthur, who is a Catholic nun, is one of the women who used to do this on a regular basis. For a number of years, she was one of the few designated persons approved by the Immigration Department to take people detained from the centre outside for an hour or two. Sometimes she'd even get half a day. And during the school holidays, she would prioritise the children. A trip to the zoo, a visit to the playground, maybe just home for a home-cooked meal. But 6 months ago, when the start of the Border Force Act came into play, the Designated Persons program was suspended without further notice. Now, these children have no one to escort them out, even for a couple of hours a week. They look at dread at the school holidays, that they are going to be locked in this prison for months over the summer break. And Mr Turnbull, of course, could change this if he wanted to. First, at the very least, he could reinstate the Designated Persons program. But actually, he could do much, much more than that. He could accept the will of the Senate, as expressed last week. He could release these children and their families from living in this prison hell. He could ensure that they have the opportunity to live in the community safely, to be integrated, to be supported, and to ensure that these children, for the first time in 2 or 3 years, actually get to be the children that so many of us, and have the childhoods that so many of us have fond memories of over the summer break. There is a day and a half left of Parliament this week and for this sitting year. I urge the Prime Minister to not keep these children under lock and key any longer, and to ensure that these children have the opportunity to spend the Christmas school holidays being children and allow them to be set free.
Thank you, Senator Hanson-Young.